Hello and welcome to Season 1, Episode 4 of Conversations with Vijeet, wherein I talk with batchmates of mine who pursued sports management from Deakin University in the years 2015 to 18. For this episode, I've got Pratik Garud with me. Hi Pratik, how are you?
Hi Vijeet, I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. So where are you Pratik right now?
Right now I'm in Vancouver, Canada. It's a Sunday morning, nice summer Sunday morning,
Yeah, nice
and
warm
I'm looking
weather.
forward to. Yeah, it's been a long time that we have chatted, and like this is a great platform, and thank you for inviting me. And
My
yeah,
pleasure.
ready to get started.
Sure. All right, so I'll start with the first question, which is what motivated you to pursue sports management and why did you choose Deakin?
Uh, so I'll just back it up a bit. So I did my bachelor's in mechanical engineering in Pune, and I finished that in 2011. And I was actually working with a Swedish MNC for almost 4 years in Pune. And while I was working there, I did get a lot of opportunities to like travel and work with different customers and stuff like that. But eventually, I think I realized that my I don't actually enjoy engineering that much. So I think that was first awakening. Like I just did not enjoy it that much. So like the question that I asked myself was, if they make you the CEO or the general manager of this company today, would you be satisfied? Like, is that your goal? And the answer to that was a definite no. So the second option or the other option that I was looking at was, so what do I like? So that was the second question, right? Like what would I like to do? And the second thing that was on my list was sports. I mean, at that time, I think it was a difficult decision to decide, like how. I mean, because you have done your bachelor's, like you grow with a typical mindset of like getting your education done, getting your job done. But then now you are at a point where like you are conflicted in your head that you have your studies and your knowledge or skill set background in engineering, and then sports wise, okay, you have participated in your school and your college and you have managed some events and stuff like that, but what does this transition actually mean? So I think what I did is at that time I started coaching at a grassroots football club. It was called Deakin Football Club. It's quite well known in Pune. So I uh, started working there as an assistant coach. So I used to go to my office an hour early and leave an hour early and go to this place and start uh, setting up the training sessions, like talk with my head coach and blah blah blah. So that point, I think that entire season, I think my first thought was probably, like I was fascinated with football. I'm a big football fan. Like you can see like the club merchandise that I am wearing right now. So soccer was a big thing. I was fascinated by soccer. I was fascinated by soccer managers back then. And I thought probably that is something that I might want to pursue. But when I actually spent a season at a grassroots level, I just realized that I don't have the necessary skills to actually become a successful coach. And like sometimes you have to be honest with yourself. Like you have to do
Yeah.
your self-assessment and know like what suits you. So from there, I think one thing I realized is that I think my skill sets then were more suitable towards the management side of it. And that's why I kind of started looking for sports management courses. When I did all my study, I think people who have been on this show before, like I think it was probably a similar journey. Like you look at the sports business journal, you see like who are the top 10 courses, like where they are, then you try your luck. Sometimes like FIFA Masters, AISTS, like there are like super awesome courses out there. Uh, some of them are too good for your experience. They don't entertain you at all. So again, that was a reality check. Uh, I chose Deakin and Deakin chose me as well. So it was also a two-way thing. One good thing about Deakin was, or the opportunity that I got with Deakin was that in Australia you get 2 years work visa after you finish your masters. So I think that was a crucial factor because I also got an admit from University of Liverpool for the football MBA. But again, back then, UK or England, they did not give you a work visa once you finish your masters, and that was just a 1 year's MBA and stuff like that. So considering all those factors, like where it is, what your work visa situation is, what the fees are, how much you will spend, and stuff like that. When I did my own financial self-assessment and the opportunities and stuff like that, I think I chose that Deakin was the better option back then, and that's how I ended up at Deakin, basically. So
Right.
that's how I basically converted my careers from engineering to sports management. So that was the beginning. That is where it all started, and this was maybe back in 2015ish. Yeah.
So, how was your course experience at Deakin, and when did you start basically? I think it was March 2016, if I'm right.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So I actually was supposed to join July 2015, but I just had some health issues, so I had to like defer my admission. I think that's something that people can take a note of, like if someone is interested in doing this course, that you can defer your admissions even if you are enrolled in a specific trimester. But you have to have a valid reason, and you have to communicate to the university way in advance, basically. So I could defer my admission from July 2015 to Feb 2016. So that is when basically I had my orientation sessions. In March, we officially started with our course. Um, Lots of things, lots of new things, actually, like they teach about sports law, sports marketing, sports broadcasting. There are like heaps of modules, but I think I would like to stress that these modules are just introductory modules. Like if you want to specialize in it, if you want to build your career on specific aspect of sports, because sports law, again, like I don't think we are qualified to actually practice sports law, but it is something good to know about. So some of the subjects are just good to know about, and that's why they are introductory. So I think people need to set their expectations right when they look at these subjects, because studying that sports law unit does not make you eligible to actually go and represent a sport organization in legal capacity,
Right. Yeah.
right? So even studying sport broadcasting does not mean that straight away out of finishing your MBA, some I don't know, someone like Star Sports or ESPN are going to take you on board. Like you have to match that with some kind of a work experience. It might be volunteering, internship, and whatnot. So anyway, so lots of modules we studied. I think like someone I think said this on the show before, that I think the work placement opportunities could have been better, and I agree with that. I think that is probably a common response from um, anyone and everyone that has completed this course during our period, basically.
Right.
So that could have been better. Uh, if you ask me, do you need a sports management MBA now? And again, like hindsight is always ideal. So when you're doing it, you probably don't think of it, but when it happens, when you reflect on it, my suggestion would be that you can do a normal MBA if you have a vast amount of sports experience. You don't necessarily need to do sports management, because the administration principles, the financial principles, they all stay the same. You just have to
Okay.
apply it to a sports industry. So it's not a must, but it's good to have, because some of the sport
Right.
jobs, some of them do ask you if you have a master's or a bachelor's degree in sports management.
Right. Yeah.
But again, management is more of an experience based career. Like the more experienced you are, the better manager you become, right? Compare this to something like sports science. I think sports science is more of a technical field, like where you need to know which muscle is where, like what bones affect what actions, what's your sporting kinematics and stuff like that. So I think that's more of a technical field, so you have direct placements based on your skills. So again, coming back to how the Deakin course was, so I think it teaches you the minimum or the introductory part of things that you need to know to start your career. But I think that just doing this course does not mean that you will end up where you think you want to be. So that is how I would probably summarize this experience. I'm pretty sure like everyone has had a different journey within their course in Deakin. Like someone interned somewhere, someone volunteered somewhere. So they always had to complement their education with some kind of a work experience to kind of reach at least their first job or second job or whatever it is. So
Right.
probably that's how I'll summarize my Deakin experience.
Yeah. So Pratik, one thing, so far I have had three guests and all of them started in July 2015, but you are the first one who started in March 2016. Do you feel it makes any difference to start in March or in July? Like, does it make any difference?
Oh, it definitely makes a big difference, specifically with one aspect. So people who started in July 2015, I realized that they get an extra summer off in a way. So
Yeah. Right.
as you know, like Deakin has trimester system, right? So their first trimester is from I think March, April, May. That's their first trimester. June is a break. Then there is July, August, September. Then you got a big summer break from almost end of October till you start again in
March
end of
first
Feb
week.
next year.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you start your course in July, so if you think of it, you finish your first trimester in September, then you get a summer break, then you start the second semester of your first year, second trimester of your first year, then you finish that year, end of October, you are done with your first trimester of your second year. So if I have to like simplify it, if you start in July, uh, you get first summer off, and then you finish three of your trimesters until you get your second summer off, and then
Right.
you
Yeah.
still have another trimester to
Mhm.
go. So I think that period, that summer, that extra summer, I think is very crucial, especially if you are looking for getting some hands-on job experience, you want to volunteer, intern, want to explore the industry, want to network and stuff like that. So I think getting that extra summer is very crucial. Whereas some Whereas if you join in Feb or March, you just have one semester because you finish your first year by October the same year, then you get one summer, and then you finish your second year the following year, and then
Right.
there's just one summer in between. So I think that is probably one big advantage that the July semester has compared to March. And I think if people are interested in this, taking up the Deakin course, then they should definitely look at maybe taking up the course in July rather than in
Right.
Feb.
Yeah. Starting in July. Right.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Right. Nice.
Yeah, yeah.
So, during your course, what kind of volunteering work and what kind of part-time work did you do?
Uh, when I joined my first trimester, I absolutely did not have time to actually volunteer or intern, because in the first trimester, it takes time to kind of understand how the educational system works, because it's way different than what we have been through in our bachelor's back home in India.
Right. Yeah.
So writing assignments and referencing things and doing group activities and stuff like that. So there are a lot of new aspects to actually pick up. So I think if I have to recommend someone or if I have to guide someone, I'll say for the first trimester, just watch how things are and how things go. So I did not push myself to do anything in the first trimester, to be honest. Towards the end of first trimester, so in June, there was a coincidence actually. So I happened to watch this USA versus Canada game at Rod Laver Arena. So this was off time for NHL. So NHL was basically in the off season in North America. So some of the key team members from different NHL teams, they basically combined to form USA and Canadian teams, and they were just doing a tour all across Australia.
So that was
So
at
one of
Rod
my
Laver
friends,
Arena.
yeah. So
Okay.
when they were in Melbourne, so and the entire Rod Laver Arena was actually converted into an ice rink. So that is
Oh yeah.
again,
Right.
that is that is
That
insane
that
actually. Like if
that's
you
what I
think of it,
wondered. Like how come there was an ice hockey match at Rod Laver Arena?
I think if you actually Google it, like they do have like a time lapse video of how they converted the entire Rod Laver Arena into an ice rink.
Okay.
But like back then, one of my friends took me to this game. He was like, "It's pretty cool." Like he used to follow ice hockey, and I was like, "Let's go and watch." And when I went there, it was completely mesmerizing. Like it's completely different experience. It is not something that you have watched before. And when we went back home and when we actually watched what happens in NHL and how big NHL is and like how cool their pre-game sessions and stuff like that is, we thought, yeah, this is a game that we might be interested in. Like we have no background of ice hockey, right? Like we don't see ice in India. for the most of the country basically. So it's not a big sport in India as of now, at least. So it was something new. What we did is we actually looked up if there are ice hockey teams in Australia, what's the scene and stuff like that. We found that there is actually a league which is called as Australian Ice Hockey League, which is a men premier league which has 8 teams, 8 franchisees, and they compete over the winter, and then there is a winner who gets the Goodall Cup. So there were like 2 teams in Melbourne. Me and my friend, we emailed both the teams saying, like, we are keen to, like, volunteer at your games if you have any openings and stuff like that. We heard back from one of the teams, which was Melbourne Ice. And that's how I actually started volunteering with them. So this was like, I'm still talking about June 2016. So during my first trimester break. And then I actually got stuck with them. Like I just loved that experience of volunteering with them. Literally my first job was to check tickets at the gates, helping people, ushering people to their seats. So basically anything and everything that they needed help with on the game days. So that was my first real work experience in Australia as such. And again, like, fortunately for me, what happened is, by the time I finished my second year of MBA, by the time I got my degree, the club actually got transformed from a volunteer-run club to a private entity. And then they needed someone to actually look after their day-to-day operations, and they needed someone who has been here. So I kind of got lucky, but I mean, to get lucky, you also have to be at the right place at the right time.
Of course,
So I got lucky. I got a job right out of college. And again, like, in these 2 years, I hadn't actually done any other part-time jobs or any
yeah,
paid roles, even in other industries, to be honest. And my thinking or my ideology behind that was, if I have changed my career from engineering to sports, then I need to build on my sports resume. So I can't spend much
fair enough.
time
Yeah,
doing other jobs at that point. So it did put me under a lot of financial stress that way. So again, I think that's one of the important factors that you need to consider when you are moving overseas for your masters, and when you are living there, you have to deal with real life problems, and finance is one of the biggest challenges that you can face. So I was under the pump when I was finishing my course, and then things just worked out. So in a way, when I look back, I think I was slightly lucky, but I think I also had worked towards it and made that position for myself. And I
right.
mean, obviously, like, because I was still into soccer. I'm still into soccer. So back then, like, I did my coaching certification. I did my referee certification from Football Federation Victoria, which is the state organization. So I did that, and I was doing that more of a hobby thing. Like, I was making money out of it, but it was not like a lot of money, but it was some money. So it was good. So it was something that I can talk about when I used to go to interviews or meet people and network with them. Like, so, like, if you like sports, if you're studying sports, so what are you doing about it? So that was my way of saying, okay, I was volunteering at ice hockey. I was, like, coaching or refereeing in soccer and stuff like that. So I always try to keep myself abreast with the local job scene and job requirements, because eventually when you finish your course, then people usually wonder, okay, now I've finished my course, then what's next? So I think that, and again, this strategy worked for me. It did not work for everyone else, but that is how I planned it out. And fortunately, like, it worked for me. So that's how I ended up with my actually first ever job, like first ever full-time job in sports, was working as sport development officer with Melbourne Ice, which is an ice hockey club. So, so when I look back, it sounds incredible. Like, in a way, like, I had never thought of this when I was doing my bachelor's, or even when I started my engineering job. But that's where I ended up at.
Right. And I think you were the first paid employee of the league, if that is right.
Uh, Technically, yes, but again, I mean, it's basically a semi-pro league. So the teams don't have that budgets to actually have a full-time employee. So again, I'll say I was just purely lucky that my team got corporatized and they had enough funds to actually create that position for me, and then I could deliver on whatever they required me to do. But yeah, I mean, it's just, yeah, I mean, I would not say I would not claim that title yet that I was the first employee, because I don't think everyone had the same level of resources and opportunities. There might be people who might have dedicated their lives for those clubs, like there have been
Yeah.
people who have been volunteered and interned. So I think claiming that title is not fair. But yeah, technically, if I have to just say who was the first employee who got paid, yes, then you're right. Yeah.
Right, nice. And so this is the job that you continued with after your course as well, right? And for how many years
Yeah.
after the course?
So I got a 2-year contract, which was exactly equivalent to my work visa contract or work visa
Yeah.
that I got from Australian immigration. So I worked there for 2 years as a full-time employee. I finished my employment end of December 2019. I was finishing my work visa in, I think, last week of Jan 2020. And I think, again, that was again a crucial time where I had to decide whether I want to stay uh, in Australia, in Melbourne, or I have to explore some other avenues. And some of the crucial factors back then were, I think, main crucial factor then was about finances, because I'm finishing my job. Uh, that team is not actually qualified to sponsor an employee, because to sponsor an employee, a company needs to fulfill certain number of criteria. So I think back then, if I remember it correctly, my boss told me that, like, you need to have a certain number of employees which are Australian, you need to make certain amount of revenue, blah blah blah. There are like heaps of rules and regulations around a company sponsoring one of their employees to stay along. So I think that is also something that the new aspiring sports managers might want to look at this factor as well. Not all companies are able to sponsor their employees. There might be very handful of them who have actually sponsored a foreign student who was employed with them. So I remember one of our colleagues, Rama. I think he did pretty well with Tennis Australia, and Tennis Australia is a big organization, so they kept him on board because of his good work and stuff like that. So again, going back to my decision in Jan 2020, it was all about finances. It was about I think back then it was very tough to get a permanent residency. I think there was no permanent residency in sports, like there was no
Yeah.
pathway around that. You might have had to move to a regional city, and even if you move to a regional city, you still had to complete certain number of years to be able to kind of apply through that pathway of sports to get a permanent residency. So I think it was kind of stressful, and it was also expensive.
All right.
And again, and even if you spend that much amount of money, time, and effort to actually apply for that PR, and again, I'm talking about situation back in December 2020, January 2020. It might be totally different now. I'm not in touch with that, but this was the situation back then. So it was a collective call considering all the situation, and I was not ready to put myself in that situation where things are uncertain and be worried about
It
it
wasn't
that
guaranteed at all if you even moved to a regional
no.
area or yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, it was
Mhm.
it was not guaranteed. So even if I
Yeah.
had moved to, I think, Perth or Adelaide, which were classified as regionals,
Yeah.
um, I wouldn't have had the enough number of years under the belt. So if you stay in regional, I think you at least had to finish 1 year of work experience in that industry to be actually able to qualify. So if I had to make a move, I should have moved way before. So again, these are some learnings that I learned when the things actually happen. So, I mean, again, I think the purpose of this podcast is, I think, to create that awareness that if you want to stay on for longer, then you should sort your visa situations way earlier and look at your options way earlier, which I probably was. If you can call me a bit lax on that front, I was happy doing what I was doing, and I was kind of a bit slack on that front of securing my visa and stuff like that. And I was just not ready when it was the decision time. I was just not ready to put myself in that uncertain situation. So I just decided to go back home at that point.
Okay. So you returned to India in January 2020?
Yeah. So end of Jan 2020, I went back home. My idea was to kind of explore the Indian sport industry because I really did not work in any sport organizations as such in India. I did do a 3 month paid internship at Go Sports during my summer break, my first and only summer break while I was doing my MBA. So I did a 3 month internship at Go Sports, which was quite good. Like the experience was quite good. And back then, Go Sports was a small team. Like I think they had like 6 or 7. I might be wrong, but there were like definitely less than 10 people who were like full time. I think now they have grown a lot. They have expanded a lot. They are doing a good job right now. So that kind of gave me some kind of an eye-opening knowledge and information about Indian sport industry. But again, like doing an internship for 3 months is different than actually working in an organization for a year or two and actually going through all the situations and scenarios. So that was different. So my plan was go back home, uh, use your knowledge and experience to actually help Indian sport industry in some form or way. I think, and I mean, I'm a purist slash idealist in that sense. At least I was back then, that I wanted to do something for Indian sport industry. So I decided to move back. I had few connections. I knew people who were working either with Sports Authority of India, with Go Sports. Some of them were working with Reliance and stuff like that. But uh, I still had not secured anything when I moved back. I started looking for opportunities when I actually moved back. One of the opportunities that I tried to explore was working with one of my colleagues, Siddharth, who is from Pune. He did sports management from Perth, and then now he has his own startup called Western State Sports Management, and he's mainly into cycling and other corporate events, and he's doing pretty well as well. But come at the March, I think everything shut down. That did not work out, and basically I was jobless, and that's a fact. And I think COVID struck hard for most of the sports industry professionals. So I spent my entire 2020, I think, till end of December, I was at home. Basically, I did explore some other opportunities in terms of like partnering up for esports or like working with these cycling events and stuff like that, but nothing uh, sustainable or nothing worthwhile came along until I saw this job opening at Sports Authority of India, because they were hiring for research officers and senior research officers. So I interviewed for them maybe around September that year in 2020, and then I got a confirmation in December, and then I joined them in January 2021. And that's the time when I moved from Pune, which is my hometown. I moved from Pune to Delhi. So I started in Jan
Oh,
2021 and I finished in October last year.
so
Yeah.
since you worked at SAI, how do you see the Indian government's efforts when it comes to developing sports in our country? You got a bird's eye view working at SAI, so can you just enlighten us on that front?
Uh, so so Sports Authority of India. First of all, I'll just establish what the key players are. I think it's important to understand like what are the mandates of all these organizations, because you hear National Sport Organization and SAI and then the Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports and blah blah blah. So I think it's very important to understand what the structure is. So ministry is responsible for uh, basically laying all the rules and regulations around how you should conduct a sporting operations, right? National Sports Federation or National Sports Organization, as they are known, they are actually responsible for growth and development of their respective sport. SAI, Sports Authority of India, is Sports Authority of India was formed initially to kind of look after the infrastructure that was created for Asian Games in 1984, which happened in New Delhi. But slowly, they kind of grew into a role where they started actually monitoring these national sporting federations. So what SAI does is SAI kind of ensures that the government rules and regulations are implemented and followed by these national sports federations.
Right. Yeah.
So that's the crucial. So basically, SAI connects the ministry and the national sport federations.
Correct. Yeah.
So that's basically what these three main players do. My role in SAI was, so I was hired under a scheme called Target Olympic Podium Scheme. So Target Olympic Podium Scheme is aimed to support the best Indian athletes in the respective Olympic disciplines. And the idea behind that is, so government has limited funds, right? Like you can't give everyone everything that they want. The government has limited funds, so they need to prioritize Olympic sports or Olympic events where there are higher chances of winning medals. And that applies also to Asian Games, Commonwealth Games, so all the major world championships, World Cups, and stuff like that. But again, it says Target Olympic Podium Scheme, so that's the final aim of that scheme, is to ensure that you identify those athletes and then you provide them with the right financial support and sports science support, so that there is nothing guaranteed in sports. So the only thing that you can ensure is that you give them a higher chance, higher probability of actually succeeding at these bigger stages. And that is the fundamental understanding of the schemes. And again, like Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports, so government has a lot of schemes. And I think for anyone who is interested to know more about like how government works, I think a good place to start is reading the Indian Sport Code Policy 2011, which is
Yeah.
still applicable to all the national sporting federations. I'm totally not sure if they have revised it yet, but I think when I joined it, that was still the policy that they were using. So that sports code policy is basically the framework with which the ministry, the SAI, the national sporting federations work. So it will tell you what all schemes the government is running, how the national sporting federation should be running, uh, what are the different clauses or norms that they follow and stuff like that. So if you want to get a very in-depth understanding of, and again, you won't understand each and every aspect of it because you haven't worked in it, but it will give you a good starting point in that sense. And I'm stressing on this so much because when I actually got this job as a research officer at TOPS, I had read this sports code policy and it actually connected with some part of my work later. That it helped me to kind of pick up some things because, like not all things can be taught. Like, like some things you learn as you do. So it's easier when you are discussing with a national sporting federation, or if you're having a chat with a coach, or if you're chatting with an administrator from a national sporting federation. It's important to understand what they're talking about. And I think this is one of the important documents that you should be aware of or you should know of when you are starting off. So again, coming back to your original question of how the government is doing, I think there is a lot more focus in sports. That is true. I think we have a lot more schemes, we have a lot more funding in that sense. The budget has increased, but I think we are still a bit off in terms of how efficient we are or how effective we are. But I think that is the process that we'll have to go through. Like you have to go through Olympic cycles to kind of understand what you did better and what worked and what did not work, and then you need to change it for the next Olympic cycle. So
Right.
that is how even you make contracts for coaches and high performance directors and whatnot. You hire them for an Olympic cycle for 4 years, but you have an yearly review with them, and then you basically ensure that everything is on track.
Right.
So government has schemes right from state training centers, STCs, which is like the grassroots, till something like TOPS. Like there are different schemes. I think in terms of awareness, they can still do better. Like there needs to be a better marketing and promotion of what government actually has in store and what they can offer. So I think that is more towards reaching out to people, saying, okay, we have these facilities, we have these schemes, and we can benefit. If you are interested in pursuing a sport or more than one sport, these are your pathways or opportunities. So I think there is some disconnect in that. So you might have the best schemes and opportunities for athletes and parents and whatnot, but you need to bridge that with that information while you are still working on making it efficient and effective.
Yeah.
So that is the part. I think that is the phase where Indian sport is at right now. They're still primitive. They're still trying to professionalize in that sense, and that is where I think the sports management students or professionals will play an important role.
Correct. Yeah.
I think the transition is on. I think there are talks of India like bidding for Olympics and stuff like that, but I think people need to know that it's not that easy to get these bids approved and win these bids and uh, actually and even if you win those bids, like there is heaps of work that goes behind. And I mean, people who have been on this show before me, they are more qualified to talk about events because they have done better events than I have done. So it's not easy. I think the efforts that the government is taking at different levels and with different stakeholders, uh, I think they can consolidate that better, but that's where it is at right now.
So, Pratik, you finished your stint at SAI in October 2022. So you moved to Canada after that. It was on PR, I guess, right?
Yes, I got my permanent residency and I moved here on 1st of November 2022. Yeah.
Okay. So how did you find work over there? Like, did you get it immediately? Like, how was the experience there?
Uh, I think the month when I moved here, I think it was the fall season. Uh, there is not much outdoor sports happening during fall. Uh, because obviously because it's cold. So it was a bit tough, and I think the hiring picks up closer to spring and summer usually, especially for
Okay.
sports industry. The financial year here runs from January to December, so that's for the individual income tax thing. So it runs from Jan to December. For businesses, it's a bit different. I think for businesses, I think it's October to September. So they have different cycles. It's not the same that we have in India. In India, it's same. Like you start in April and you finish in March. That's the financial yearly cycle. So that affects actually when and how companies will advertise and when they will advertise for positions. So that's one of the
Right.
important factors that you need to be aware of. So speaking about my experience, I did get interviewed for at least two or three different positions. But again, I was not getting the breakthrough of getting a full-time role. I did manage to get a couple of part-time roles. So I started working as a league coordinator with this company called Urban Recreation. So they basically operate in the recreational space. They have different sports like indoor floor hockey. They've got volleyball. They've got basketball tournaments, softball tournaments, soccer tournaments. I was working as a soccer. Again, soccer, that's what they call it here in North America. So again, something that people need to know. So I was working as a soccer league coordinator. My job was just mainly to kind of set up, run the day-to-day on-field operations for soccer. So that was technically my first job in Canada in Vancouver. My second part-time role I got was with Vancouver Whitecaps, which is a soccer team that plays in MLS Western Conference. Uh, I worked there as a match day crew. So again, I was basically jumping on all the opportunities where I could again enhance my sporting resume, get some local experience because we hear that a lot. Like having a local experience matters. Like
Yeah.
whether you're in Australia, India, any part of the world in
Right.
sports, they do ask you for local experience. So doesn't matter what you have done before. Um, it's not that it doesn't matter. It's just that they prefer having someone with a local
Yeah.
experience. So I think that's always a challenge. So again, like I said, like a seasonal economical challenge, like when the financial cycles ends and when the companies hire and stuff like that, that matters. And then it also matters how much local experience or local network you have. So it takes time. So if you are moving to a new country, you cannot immediately expect that you will get a job right away unless there is an exceptional case. And I mean, I will not talk about exceptional cases. I'll talk about the majority of us
Yeah.
who what challenges they face. So I started off with urban recreation. I started off with Vancouver Whitecaps. It was not until March this year that I actually secured a full-time role with Vancouver Ultimate League, which is a non-for-profit organization. And again, for many, ultimate is the name of the sport where they basically play frisbee. So we all know about frisbee, but they call it ultimate here in North America, and it's been played in Australia as well. It's very popular in European countries as well. I think it's also picking up in India. Like I actually had a conversation with one or two of my friends who actually have played ultimate in India. So it's an upcoming sport. Um, uh, it's quite popular in this part of Canada, in British Columbia, which is the province where Vancouver is. Our basic mandate is to basically facilitate all the recreational programs for youth and adults.
Okay.
But we are at a cross point uh, where we are also looking at some professional development, professional courses. So we are kind of on the brink of recreation and having a proper youth program which leads to high performance and stuff like that. So that is where this sport is at. Um Again, the background of this sport is this sport started around 1960s. So someone in US discovered this sport. So it's quite popular in US. It has grown in Canada and Europe and Australia. So it has its own fan base. So we are one of the biggest leagues in British Columbia, and definitely one of the biggest leagues on the west coast of Canada. I mean, I can't compare it with US because US is quite big, and US has more structured way of doing things, so it's quite popular there. But in Canada, it's one of the biggest leagues where I'm working, and my job role there is youth programs manager. So basically, I am responsible for anything and everything that they have to do with youth. So we run our own skill series. You can call them camps or clinics. So basically, we focus on elementary age groups. So someone aged 7 or 8 to 11 years old. That's the elementary group. Then you have secondary school. Then you have high school kids, and some of those kids actually end up playing for our club. So we also have club programming, which is like more structured team-based programs. So we have to keep a balance between how we develop that talent pool and then also provide them opportunity to play more professional. Again, they don't get paid for it, but they actually play for state level tournaments and national level tournaments through one of our youth clubs. So we have 4 youth clubs in 4 different cities. So it started in Vancouver. That's why it's named Vancouver Ultimate League. But we have youth clubs in other cities as well. It's called North Vancouver, Richmond, Surrey, Burnaby. So these are all neighboring cities around Vancouver. So we kind of managed to tap into all these cities and establish some form of youth ultimate programming. So again, when it comes to my role, like I'm responsible for all these youth clubs that we are running, and then I'm also responsible for running all those skill development camps.
Right.
So quite interesting. It's quite challenging. It is definitely a step up from what I've done before. I do have a administration experience working with like 15 or 20 volunteers over a period of season. But when you have a staff, when you have a paid staff, I think there are more HR pieces and more financial pieces that you need to be aware of and you need to manage. Also working with youth, I think there are heaps of rules and regulations that you have to be mindful of, because again, you are working with kids who are under 18. So you have to make sure that there are waivers and consents and insurances and stuff like that. So there are like a lot of moving pieces which probably don't apply to you, which don't apply to adult programming much, but there are probably more in youth side. So yeah, it's definitely a step up from what I've done. It's definitely challenging, and I'm still exploring like how I see myself evolving in this role, what I can learn, how I can apply whatever I have learned before through previous experiences. Um, if I have to take a review of what I have done till now, like I've always tried to kind of work with different type of sport organizations. So, for example, the ice hockey club was a private club. Go Sports was a non-for-profit organization which was focusing on Olympic and Paralympic programs. Sports Authority of India is more of a government organization which is like in charge of most of the sporting scene in India. This is again a Vancouver Ultimate League is also a non-profit organization, but again they have their own different challenges, like how they have aligned their strategic plans with the state organization and the national organization. So uh, again, this was the strategy that worked for me, and this may not be true or work, or this may not um, hold true for anyone and everyone who is wanting to make their career in sports management, if I can say that. Uh, for me, most important thing was to get that knowledge in sports and build your resume, make that network. And I think you have to, if I have to simply put it, I think my approach was to make mistakes in the initial part of your career, right? Like it is impossible to like everything uh, when you start in a new country in a new sport. And for some reason, I have found a knack of finding myself in sports that are not familiar to me at all. So like ice hockey was new. When I was working as a research officer at SAI, I was responsible for fencing initially. Then I was looking after shooting. Again, I don't have background in these sports, so you really have to put in a lot more effort than what is told in terms of what you have to finish. Like
Yeah.
you have to build that knowledge and skill set. You have to read documents. You have to talk to people, industry experts, and whatnot. So again, my career plan, my idea is initially to kind of work in these different type of scenarios. For me, I don't want to explore sports retail or events that much at this point. I don't think that that is necessarily my strength. I think I want to work into sport development aspect, which is more central to the sport industry, and that's how I have ended up here. So
Right.
that's how I have roughly planned. Again, plans, you have to have plans which are flexible. Like you might end up getting opportunities which are outside of what you have planned and thought of. But so far, it has been working for me, and I think I see myself developing towards that actually with this role with Vancouver ultimately.
Nice. Wonderful. So, having worked in sports in Australia, India, and now Canada, how do
Yeah.
you compare these three countries? Like, who has the best systems, if I can ask that?
Uh, these three countries again, like I think I think the important bit to understand here is that sport as an industry gets affected with all the socio-economic factors,
Right. Yeah.
like any other industry. Like it might be IT and retail, or uh, I don't know, engineering. I don't know. So there are like heaps of other industries which get affected with change of government, change of economic policies, change of culture, and stuff like that. So sports is one of them. So I think that's the basics of studying if you want to compare the sporting ecosystem of all these three countries. So it definitely varies. So if you want me to answer like what's the best I've seen, I think I'll say Australia has probably one of the strongest sporting ecosystem.
Right.
And when I say ecosystem, I mean, they have the policies, the procedures, the governance structure, the funding opportunities, and how effectively they will spend it. And again, I think I will connect this with about what I said about my SAI experience. We need to get more efficient and more effective with what we have got. Every country has got limited resources.
Yeah.
Again, yes, developed countries have more money, but
Mm.
more money or like more coaches and more equipment and more resources does not necessarily transform into podium finishes or your goals or targets that you have set for that
Correct. Yeah.
specific sport. So having things is good, but you also need to complement that with good policies and procedures and governance. And I think Australia is one of the countries that I've seen has one of the strongest policies around sports. So India is still catching up with that, but I think with influx of more sport management professionals, I hope that more sporting background people are in place to kind of take those decisions in India. In Canada, again, I think I'm too new to kind of comment on Canadian sport industry, but I think it's probably in between India and Australia, but more towards Australia's, uh, let's say, strengths. So here they have focus on sport, but not as much as in Australia, but better
Yeah.
than India. If you want me to compare that, sports wise, again, the sports that are popular in Australia, in India, in Canada, they are way too different. So you have to understand that as well. Like Canada is inviting over 2 lakh immigrants every year, so cricket has been picking up in Canada.
Okay.
So
Mhm.
so that social change, that immigration policy change is affecting the sport industry differently.
Right.
So
Yeah.
and again, it is changing rapidly. So again, how much the government will invest, and I'm saying the local government, the local council, the state government, and the federal government, I think their policies towards making people active socially and also participate professionally will affect. But I think as of now, I think Australia is best placed. Canada is trying to somewhat catch up. But again, I think fundamentally all these major countries, when it comes to major events, they have limited funds and they try to do a targeted funding.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
again, that was the philosophy what TOPS has adopted. But yeah, I think they have the infrastructure here in Canada, but I think they still need more focus and more infrastructure, because again, if you see, like Canada just reached 40 million. Uh, they just hit the 40 million mark for population last month, if I'm not wrong, in June. So for a second, third largest country in the world, 40 million is nothing, right? So I think so these focuses and how much they are spending and what resources they have got, so it varies a lot. So it will be kind of unfair to say, oh, they are doing better and they are not doing better, but it
Mhm.
affects with a lot of different, again, economic factors, I'll
Right.
say.
A lot
But
of
yeah,
things are
so
there. Yeah. Mhm.
yeah, so you need to understand, and I think that affects how you look to build your career and what sports you will explore and what kind of job positions you will explore. So whether it's
Mhm.
events, retails, hospitality, sales or broadcasting or marketing or even just sport development. So you have to consider these factors, like where they are moving towards, what the social structure is moving towards, because the largest population is involved in recreational sport.
Mhm.
Probably not even 10% of population actually participates in professional sports,
Right.
because yes, professional sports is not for everyone. So that cannot be a benchmark in terms of deciding for the masses. You have to have two different strategies and then you have to develop accordingly.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what advice would you give to aspiring sports management students and professionals? Any maybe two or three nuggets?
I think because this podcast is more targeted towards uh, people who want to be in sports management side of it, so I'll just probably tailor my advice to the sports management side of it. First of all, I think I'll talk about the education part of it, because we discussed that as one of the main aspects, sports management courses. I think sports management courses, you need to again and again. I'm prioritizing this as an advice because I get a lot of questions on LinkedIn as well about I want to do this course. Like, what's your advice about it? So this is the show that you need to watch. Uh, so my first advice about education is you need to first assess whether you are ready to take that financial risk, because the fees of these courses to study abroad, it might be UK, US, Canada, or Australia, they are not cheap, because the fees that international students pay and what the locals pay are way different.
Yeah.
So you are investing a lot of money upfront, and you are taking a risk because you are moving to another country, and you have to develop your own network, build your sports resume, and do all the hard work to kind of start from scratch, basically. And excuse me, I've seen people who have had like 6 or 7 years of experience. They move to a city like Melbourne, but they still struggle to. And I'm talking about sports experience, hardcore sports experience.
Yeah.
They still struggle to find a job, and then people are perplexed and they are like confused, like, I have so much of experience, why am I not getting a job? And then you talk about freshers, they don't even stand a chance if an experienced person is not getting a job. So you really need to assess your risks of, and mainly I'm talking about financial risks, because financial pressure is the worst kind of pressure according to me. Like, it can make you do crazy things at
Right.
times. So it definitely puts you on the edge. So you have to assess whether you have that capacity to kind of wait, because this industry will take a lot of time from you in terms of patience and trying and working and trying to network and all the things that you have heard from previous podcasts as well. It takes time to build your career in sports management. So you have to give yourself those many number of years. And again, I won't put a number to it because it can be different. Someone might just make a breakthrough in first year, and some might take 3 years or 5 years. So give yourself that much time, but make sure that you have financial stability to kind of make that jump and make that financial commitment towards your course and change to sports management.
Right.
So education piece wise, I'll say that's important. If you, there is another point to it, that if you actually have a sporting experience, like a good sporting experience, even in India, you can look at doing MBA at a good university or college in India. And that can complement your sporting experience, work experience, and that will help you in sports industry, sports management industry, the same way that it has helped us when we did the Deakin sports management course. So sport management course does not actually give you a, I mean, it is a tailored course, so you definitely learn more about sport industry, but you can I want people to know that you still have that option to kind of work with sport experience, do a normal MBA, and then chase your dreams in sports. So it's not a must. That is what my basic
Right.
point is.
Yeah.
Uh second important thing is, if you decide to get into this industry, I think um you need to understand that networking is important, but it is not either or. So it's like, you have to network, but you also have to kind of take efforts to kind of build that sporting resume, which worked for me. That you have to keep doing something which you can talk about when you are actually meeting people, so-called networking events or one-on-one meetings. You're meeting someone at Starbucks for coffees and whatnot. I think people look towards what value you bring to the table.
Right.
So I think that is an important, one of the most important points. Like, be useful, be valuable, and valuable in the sense, I'm not expecting you to take huge financial decisions and HR decisions for the person you're talking to. It's about uh being being wise about knowing what the person is looking for. If you are expecting something from that person that you're networking with, if you are looking at uh, a specific auxiliary side of sports business, so like retail or sales or I don't know, broadcasting or marketing, then again, it is also important who you reach out to. Just don't reach out to anyone and everyone, because not anyone, not so someone like me who is in sport development probably won't be the best fit for you as a mentor or as an advisor if you want to work in sports events. So you have to find people who have done that, and then if that's your goal and if that's your dream, you have to kind of bring some kind of value to the table. That okay, I have worked at, if events is your goal, then you have to kind of be able to say that okay, I've worked these 3 events, I've learned this, I think I'm lacking this, would you able to advise me on this? So then that person knows you have tried something.
Right.
Because if you have not tried something, he's like, go out and try something first. Like that is the basic advice that that person will tell you. So you have to bring some real life experience with you, some tried aspects of your job hunting with you when you go out to these networking events. So I think, again, going back to my second advice is you have to put a right balance between networking and actually going out and getting some volunteering or internship experience. And there have been people who have worked with me and have approached me on LinkedIn or uh, connected me on some other platforms. And I think this is one of the most common aspects. Like, people are attracted towards the glamour side of the sport, but I think I'll say it takes a lot of hard work, like any other industry. Like, unless you are working at a very top level, and again, I think you don't need to kind of rush towards it. You have to probably take continual steps and not probably look for a straight vertical jump, like I do this course and I'll find something by magic and then I'll make it to the top. There is nothing easier, like you have to work towards it. So I think one thing I realized is that people are kind of detached with the reality. They see the glamorous side of sport. They see these players getting big contracts, these team paying out, uh, you know, thousands and millions of dollars over a single player. They get these broadcasting rights and stuff like that. So that whole hype and vibe around top tier sport is good to get people interested in sports, but when it actually comes to building your career, it's not that easy. You have to be patient, you have to put in a lot of hard work, you have to put in a lot of network. Sometimes you might even question whether you are actually passionate or not, because what it seems from outside and what it is from the inside, I think it will test you as a person, your own goals and targets. So you have to again balance the network and hard work to kind of realize all these things, reassess your goals, and basically be aware, be self-aware. I think
Hmm.
introspection is probably helpful at maybe spend a a moment or 2 moments in a year where you really introspect, like what you are doing, what you wanted to do, where you are going, and then realign. It is always a good time to introspect, think, and realign yourself with what is going on. And again, like I said, there are so many things affecting this industry. Not everything is in your control, so you
Hmm.
have to really adapt to it and not get discouraged too soon, because I think that's what I've seen with youngsters who have, and I'll say youngsters because I'm 33-year-old, my beard is getting. So I think when I had a thought of joining sport industry, this was in 2014 and 15. So it's been already 10 years, and things have changed for me in last 10 years. Like, I have realized so many things. I have realized what kind of uh, let's say business vertical I want to be part of. Like, okay, whether I want to be in sport development or just the administration side of it, and blah blah blah. So each and every person needs to reassess that, get in touch with the reality of this industry. It's not as glamorous as it looks like from the outside. You have to work towards it. So I think that's probably my advice for all the upcoming and new kids who are in this industry.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that because if you're working in a grassroots sports organization, then it won't be that glamorous. Because glamour is something that which attracts even even if I consider my example, even I got attracted to to the sports industry because it looked glamorous from the outside. But
Yeah.
I can relate to what you're saying because even I felt that it is a bit different. Like when you start working in the industry, especially when you're working in an unglamorous part of it, you realize that you need a lot of hard work that you need to put in. And it's not just about seeing the sports stars every day and maybe mingling with them, clicking pictures with them, and being
Yeah.
friends with them as well. So it's not always like that. And
Yeah.
yes, especially on at the grassroots level, yes, it's not that glamorous.
Yeah. And I think, and the more you work, the wiser you become.
Correct.
Like
Yeah.
because you interact with so many different point of views and opinions. It's not just about work. It's like you socialize with people who are in that industry. And again, socialize not only to get something out of them, but to genuinely have a discussion with them. Not
Correct.
just like connect with people just to, tell me if I should do Deakin course or should I do Liverpool course. Like it's really your decision at the end of the day. I think that is what people need to understand. What they can ask people is the important aspect, like what we are discussing right now, like what your opinion of this is. So like if you, and then you have to be very crisp and to the point in that sense when you're networking out to the industry experts. I won't call myself an expert yet because it's a scary title, like to be an expert. Like, and again, you will realize that once you are part of this industry. And I think
Correct.
this is probably true across all the major industries. Like you have to get into it, you have to work, you have to get a feel of it, and then you kind of see and think, oh, maybe this is not what I thought it was.
Yeah.
Like maybe I don't know. Declan Rice is getting 105 million pounds from his transfer probably costed Arsenal 105 million pounds. So I mean, like you're not getting any of it. So you have to be realistic about these things. Not everything
Correct.
is about Premier League or soccer or I don't know what sport you follow. Like in terms of popularity. Again, there are fan moments. Even I went through fan moments as well. But then you just realize these people are human beings. They are
Correct.
just like you. So
Yeah.
you don't have to be a fanboy when you are at work. You still have to do your job. Like
Right.
Tennis Australia, they don't allow you to, if you're working at Tennis Australian Open, they don't allow you to actually take photos or signatures from the players during the tournament. So I
Right.
think that rule is in place because you don't have those fanboy movements, and then you let the players be and you do your job. So you have to understand that you are a sport manager, you have certain kind of responsibility, and then you have to deliver on some big projects. So that is what
Right.
matters most. That is how you'll make your name in this in the in the industry.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. So,
Yeah.
Pratik, last question. Now, what's ahead for you? Any short-term and long-term goals that you have chalked out?
Uh, my short-term goal would be to kind of explore the youth program manager role. This is something really I was fortunate to kind of get into because it's a higher responsibility. Uh, Whatever I've learned and experienced till now, I think I'm able to kind of use that. But also because of a higher responsibility, I'm kind of learning new things. So I think with my initial strategy of keep working, keep learning, and see where it goes, I think I will go with that strategy with this project, if I can call it a project. Um, Somewhere down the line, I think I would still want to stick to sports development. And again, that is a very broad term,
Yeah.
saying sport development, because development can be anything. Like you can be developing a field, you can be developing a policy or a procedure, you can be developing apparel and whatever. Like so, but I think mine is more towards getting people active, getting people uh, the mass population to come and play our sport in which I am working right now, which is ultimate. So my goal is to make sure that I implement those strategies, I get to experiment things because I am in a position where I can influence those decisions. I can decide a course of direction that this program can take. And I think it's a big responsibility. And I think I would like to deliver on that. And in future, I would like to take up projects like these
Right.
eventually.
All right.
And
Pratik Garud.
hopefully be known as, sorry to cut you, but hopefully known as the expert, and not just because there are like a lot of self-proclaimed experts moving around. So I think that is one of the probably passing advice that I'll give people is that when you connect with people, take it with a whatever advice they give, take it with a pinch of salt, because not everything is true and real. People kind of hype up themselves, and I think I want people, the kids especially who are reaching out to industry experts, that not everything is true, or like you have to fact check what they are saying, whether it is actually true or not. So
Right.
probably that's my going away advice for them.
Yeah, and be humble, I guess, to everyone.
Oh yeah,
That's the advice,
I
yeah.
think. Oh yeah, stay on this planet so that you can deliver your project on this planet.
Correct, yeah. All right, Pratik, it was really wonderful chatting with you, and I really like the way you thought about your answers and thought about them in detail and elaborated on the things. Thanks for taking time out, and it was again, I'll repeat, it was lovely chatting with you.
Oh, it was a pleasure, Vijay. Thank you for having me. This is my first official, public presence in terms of social media advising people. So I was like kind of getting some goosebumps when I started this, but I think it turned out to be a nice chat with you. It is always pleasure to talk with you and connect with you. So yeah, I think good luck to this series. I think it's super important what you are doing. I think people need to know what's happening out there, and especially coming from Indian sport industry, I think there are not many avenues and resources where people get real advice. So I hope people find this useful, and they can subscribe and like and whatever if they want more information.
Yeah. Yeah, actually that I think that was the purpose that I started with. Like since I've done the same course and I've seen how many people are doing the same course, not at Deakin, but around the world and also in India. There are a
Yeah,
lot of students, sports management students out there now. And again, you need a reality check as well. And that can only come from people who have worked in the industry. So that's
yeah,
the purpose that I started with. And I think I'm happy that people are liking it now.
yeah. Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Happy to help.
Oh, thanks. Thanks a lot, Pratik.
Not a problem. Thanks for
All
having
right.
me, Vijay.